Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of Second Take Cinema, coming at you from the glorious Impala Films headquarters in sunny Southend-on-Sea. I'm your host, Jamie Evans, joined, as always, by Mr. Rory Jocelyn. Today, we are going back to the year 2017 as we take our second look at a Darren Aronofsky film. We are giving a second take to Mother. Mother is a 2017 fantasy drama, is what it's described as.
Fantasy drama,
which I'm not sure personally entirely fits.
It's definitely... It's fantasy, but it's not high fantasy.
No. Written and directed by Darren Aronofsky, starring Jennifer Lawrence, Javier Bardem, Ed Harris, Michelle Pfeiffer, Domhnall Gleeson, Brian Gleeson, Kristen Wiig, and Stephen McCarthy. It was made for a budget of $30 million and grossed $44.5 million at the box office. So not great.
It's not an easy watch.
No.
And certainly not for... Definitely not for general audience. Usually films are like lowest common denominator. This isn't that.
No. The website CinemaScore gave it an F grade.
I'm guessing in like an A to F.
Yeah.
Scale. Right.
And Deadline Hollywood attributed the film's underperformance to both its controversial nature and its misleading advertising campaign. Aronofsky himself responded to the film's CinemaScore rating by saying that Mother was meant to be difficult viewing for audiences. How, if you walk out of this movie, are you not going to give it an F? We wanted to make a punk movie and come at you, and the reason I wanted to come is because I was very sad and I had a lot of anguish and I wanted to express it. Mother received generally positive reviews from critics, who praised Aronofsky's direction and the performances, particularly those of Lawrence and Pfeiffer, while its biblical allegories and depictions of violence were scrutinised by some media outlets. The film received both boos and a standing ovation during its premiere at the Venice Film Festival.
So split the audience then.
Yeah, and holds a 69% on Rotten Tomatoes, with the site's consensus stating, "There's no denying that Mother is the thought-provoking product of a singularly ambitious artistic vision, though it may be too unwieldy for mainstream tastes." Metacritic, which uses weighted average, assigned the film score 76 out of 100. Owen Gleiberman of Variety, in a positive review of the film, called Mother a piece of ersatz humanity, and wrote, "By all means go to Mother and enjoy its roller coaster of weird exhibitionism, but be afraid, be very afraid, only if you're hoping to see a movie that's as honestly disquieting as it is showy." Peter Travers of Rolling Stone awarded the film 3.5 out of 4 stars, describing it and Aronofsky's direction as an artist's cry from his own corrupt heart and a work of a visionary. He also praised the film's allegorical narrative and the performances of Lawrence, Bardem and Pfeiffer, and said positively that the cinematography always seems on the verge of exploding. Writing for the Chicago Tribune, Michael Phillips said, "Darren Aronofsky delivers a damning critique of the artist-muse arrangement, even as he admits to its old-fashioned patriarchal simplicity." He also referred to the film and its script as grandiose and narcissistic, and in quick strokes, pretty vicious, whilst drawing a similarity between it and Aronofsky's film Black Swan. Writing for The Guardian, Peter Bradshaw gave the film 5 stars, saying Darren Aronofsky's toweringly outrageous film leaves no gob unsmacked. It is an event movie detonation, a phantasmagorical horror and black comic nightmare that jams the narcosis needle right into your abdomen. In an essay for The Hollywood Reporter, Martin Scorsese said, "It was so tactile, so beautifully staged and acted. The subjective camera and the POV reverse angles always in motion, the sound design which comes at the viewer from around corners and leads you deeper and deeper into the nightmare, the unfolding of the story which very gradually becomes more and more upsetting as the film goes forward. The horror, the dark comedy, the biblical elements, the cautionary fable, they're all there, but they're elements in the total experience which engulfs the characters and the viewers along with it. Only a true, passionate filmmaker could have made this picture, which I'm still experiencing weeks after I saw it." To get a opposing view, however, Rex Reed gave the film 0 stars in the New York Observer and wrote, "Despite some good cinematography, nothing about Mother makes one lick of sense, as Darren Aronofsky's corny vision of madness turns more hilarious than scary."
Oh, it's not quite Midsummer. Midsummer turns stupidly hilarious. It's not on that level.
No. With so much crap around to clog the drain, I hesitate to label it the worst movie of the year when worst movie of the century fits it better.
But to be fair on his review, I can see where he's coming from, only on the front of, if you don't, he never obviously got the meaning. If you don't get the meaning, it is just shit is happening for no reason. What is this bullshit? If you don't get the meaning, and he considering he said it's meaningless.
Yeah. Well,
that suggests something in that frame.
Reed further went on to dismiss all other critics' positive reviews of the film, labelling them as equally pretentious and even nuttier than the film itself.
It is a pretentious movie.
Saying they all insist Mother is a metaphor for something, although they're not quite sure what it is. Similarly, the New Republic's Joe Livingston stated that the film has no human centre to hold it down. Anthony Lane wrote in his review in The New Yorker that "my patience was tested beyond repair. I am afraid by the nimbus of nonsense." In the Wall Street Journal, John Anderson said, "It achieves a level of excess that makes the whole enterprise increasingly cartoonish rather than just awful." Richard Roper of the Chicago Sun-Times rated the film 2 out of 4 stars, writing that whilst he appreciated Lawrence's performance, he questioned whether Aronofsky was mocking certain biblical passages featured in the film.
I thought there was a Jesus allegory, didn't I, at one point?
Yeah. Featured in the film, or presenting a commentary on the artistic process. The correct answer is it's both, but we'll get there. A lot of people don't seem to like the fact that it's got multiple interpretations. They'd rather it just have one clear...
Probably because, see, I didn't have a problem with it having multiple, but then if they were sold it as a straightforward horror film, multiple interpretations would be annoying. But then they were probably already annoyed by the fact that they got in the cinema and it wasn't a straightforward horror movie. Yeah. So I think some of it is what people brought to it because of the marketing. The film was nominated for 3 Golden Raspberry Awards.
Worst Director for Darren Aronofsky.
Jeez.
Worst Actress for Jennifer Lawrence.
Oh, she wasn't that bad. Jesus Christ.
And Worst Supporting Actor for Javier Bardem.
They acted
unfair,
well.
I think.
I think it's unfair. Director, I can believe giving it to Darren Aronofsky only if you missed what the interpretation was meant to be. That I can understand, because again, it just feels like shit happening if you don't get the meaning. Yeah. But Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem's performance always works. Yeah. Like, I always believe them. So that seems like people just giving it to them because they didn't like the film.
So, we don't have a quiz for this episode because I think we're going to spend quite a while talking about the meaning of this film. So, we're going to move straight into our main discussion. And since I think the interpretations... Well, first of all, let me explain why I've put the film in. So, I saw Mother the year it came out. I saw it in the cinema. I went to see it because the trailers made this look like a fairly standard horror movie in which Jennifer Lawrence is in this age gap relationship with Javier Bardem, Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer turn up at the house. They're complete strangers, but he invites them to stay. Then more and more people turn up, and it made it look
To
like
a level
it
that
was...
does actually happen
Yes,
as well.
to be fair, the trailers didn't lie, they misled. The trailers made it look like it was some sort of Rosemary's Baby type thing, where they were trying to get her pregnant with like a demon baby type thing.
Right, so it's more of an occult thing. And to be fair, again, there are cult elements to this film later on.
There are. So I went to see it. There were 6 people, including myself, in the cinema when I saw it. And I saw it either the day it came out or the day after. I don't remember which.
Weird, so most people didn't even bother going to try and see it anyway.
Yep.
Okay.
There were 6 of us in the cinema, and 3 of them walked out 20 minutes in. And I won't lie, for a good part of the runtime, I was thinking to myself, either I'm an idiot or this movie's terrible. So I was...
I honestly thought the same thing when you showed it to me.
Yeah. I haven't seen it since. After I realised what it was about, I ended up really liking it. And I think I used to have a podcast around that time called Jamie versus Movies, and I actually listed it as my favourite film of the year that year.
Okay.
I haven't seen it since because I knew it was the sort of film... I bought it on DVD as soon as it came out, and I've never watched it because I knew it was the sort of film that you don't want to watch often.
No, it's not an easy rewatch.
And I wanted to make sure I'd left some distance so that my watch wasn't coloured by my first watch of it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's why I decided to put it in the list. I thought it'd be one that we'd have lots to talk about, particularly since we enjoyed talking about The Wrestler so much, which is a previous Aronofsky film.
I will say I think The Wrestler's a better movie.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. So what I want to do is, I think before we go into the interpretations of the film, because that's the bit that's going to be the meat and potatoes of the discussion, I think we should talk more about the actual production elements first.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the performances, the camera work, that sort of thing. So where would you like to start?
All right, well, we've already mentioned performances, so let's delve into that a little bit. Essentially, the overarching plot in just a purely narrative sense, not in terms of meaning. You've got a house in the middle of fucking nowhere, huge house. Jennifer Lawrence and Javier Bardem are in this relationship. She's trying to redecorate. He's trying to write a new poem because he's a famous poet or something like that. And essentially, within this framework, he's got this... It's not quite a diamond, but it's like glass. It looks diamond-esque. Big, large piece of glass that he says is the last remnant of his previous home, and he lost everything when it burned down, and all that was left in the remnants was this glass diamond thing. Ed Harris walks up and just arrives at the house. Javier Bardem invites him in, and over the course of this, while she's trying to redecorate the house, more and more people turn up, and they all feel entitled not only to the home. It gets to the point where more and more people get so entitled that they break the house, they start stealing bits out of the house, they completely ransack and take over the house. A murder takes place in the house as well at one point. And during all of this, Jennifer Lawrence is basically begging Javier Bardem to get rid of people. She's trying to kick people out. No one listens to her. And whenever there's any mention of the positive hospitality they've gotten, all the praise is heaped upon Javier Bardem. And it's like, oh, thank you for his hospitality. And she's sort of basically sidelined and shown as a bit of a nuisance, if anything. Yeah. And then the facts of what happens visually in the film is he finishes the poem. It becomes a massive success. People cry and they come and then more people turn up at the house, almost like a pilgrimage to his house. And then it becomes almost like a big cult. They all take over the home, wreck the home. She has a baby with him. And then eventually they kill the baby out of excitement of seeing this new born baby. She screams the house down and burns the house down with her in it. So that's the meat and potatoes. And here's the thing, like, if you, outside of the meanings that we'll try and discuss, as a sequence of events, it never outwardly, it's not a film that tells you what it's doing. It never says, this is the meaning. Oh, well, this is kind of what we're talking about in this movie. So you are you are going in blind, and unless you grab at it, and I grabbed it later than you did, because you told me the point where you grabbed the meaning. It took me until literally the final scene of the movie to go, got it, right, I get it.
I have two interpretations of the film. The first interpretation I got at the point I told you.
Right.
The other interpretation I didn't get till right at the end.
Right.
Which I imagine is probably going to be the same interpretation you've had of it.
Sure, yeah.
So that one I didn't get till the end when he has the line where he says it can never be enough.
Yeah. So, but if you just take the events as they are and as they're presented, this film makes no sense. It's a nightmare, as people have stated. It plays like a nightmare. Time is not consistent. Things just speed by at certain points, and at other points it takes forever.
Bear in mind, no time skip is ever confirmed.
No.
She basically goes from pregnant to ready to give birth instantly, essentially.
Yeah.
And every time she leaves a room, when she comes back, there's more people.
Yeah. But there are points where people are out of sync with her version of reality. Will follow her, and they'll just almost transport from one room to another.
Yes. And sort of it feels as if time itself is moving on because the technology of the people grows.
Yeah.
Which becomes important for the allegory.
But
just taking the bit that we see without any of the interpretation, he's definitely captured, like from a horror, since it was marketed as a horror film, he's definitely captured. This feels like a nightmare.
Yeah.
I can imagine having this nightmare.
Yeah.
Where your house is just. I'm not talking like someone breaks in to
loss
kill
of control.
you, but just more and more people keep turning up.
Yeah, the lack of control of your own space, the lack of security, the lack of having any sort of implication on things that are happening around you in your home.
And it's why I would definitely say Aronofsky did not deserve to be nominated for Worst Director. Possibly Worst Writer. Because if you didn't agree with what the film is, I don't think you can argue this is badly directed.
No, I don't think you can either.
It's frenetic. It feels like a nightmare. It feels surreal.
Yeah.
Like sorry, I just don't think you can argue it's badly directed.
I can agree with that. It is. If there are any issues, it will be scripture. It'll be scripture. It'll be script based. Also, honestly, those 3 Raspberry Awards, they feel like they're just, I hated this film, director sucks, actors suck, fuck this film. Because, like the direction, Jennifer Lawrence's performance and Javier Bardem's performance is brilliant. It's not bad. Even if you don't get the film, like, you don't disbelieve them. Like, a Golden Raspberry Award for bad acting would be that they've eaten her, and they're gonna eat me. Oh my god. You don't get that in this film. And in fact, you know what acting does deserve Golden Raspberries is Midsummer. And I know Midsummer is a different movie, but it's a horror movie roughly around the same sort of time, just a bit later.
A couple of years later.
It was lambasted and adored in similar measure to this film. So there is a lot in common. And it's also not a traditional horror in the sense that it was marketed as. The difference is that film does fall apart and its narrative is garbage. This film falls apart if you don't get the narrative. But again, in that one, there's characters, and again, that's mostly script-based again. You don't believe the characters because they're written all of a sudden. Like, there's a really intelligent guy who's suddenly written to be a complete doofus just because it helps us kill him off in the story. That doesn't happen in this. Even in that level, Javier Bardem doesn't suddenly become a different character. Jennifer Lawrence doesn't suddenly change motivation. Their characters are set, and they play them very strongly. You feel her frustration. You feel her lack of control and panic over the situation. And you feel frustrated at Javier Bardem for not giving her any fucking attention or credence and just being like, it's fine, they'll just stay for a while. Well, I've invited more people around, and at times he doesn't even tell her. They just fucking appear, and he's like, oh yeah, I did invite them. Well, fuck off. Like, so no, you can't argue the performances, and you're right, I don't think you can argue the direction is terrible either. They're very good at capturing the nightmare at the very least. Just to interrupt for a moment. That's right, I was done.
I I think Javier Bardem does a really good job because he manages to capture, and there's not just anyone can do this. There's only a select few actors who can. He feels both warming and sinister at the same time.
When he's waiting for her to, like, when he asks to hold his baby, and he sits there waiting for her to fall asleep and just staring at her, it is intimidating, but he doesn't feel threatening in a weird simultaneous. But the scenario makes it weirdly scary, and that fact that she's over time, and the fact that she's getting tired because of the passage of time, and he's not. There's a kind of weird stoicism to his character where he's got almost complete autonomy and control, and the fear is the fact that he should be the rock she leans on. You feel that he should absolutely be, in a normal film, he would be the rock that we all, lean upon to make sure that shit stops happening. And you feel that that adds to the reason why the loss of control is there. He's not caught in the whirlwind. No. He's leading the whirlwind, but it feels like he's away from it and separate at the same time. That's hard to pull off.
It's happening despite him, sort of thing. But he's not stopping it because he adores the attention.
Yes.
Yes. The set's brilliant. I love this house.
Yeah, it must be a set because of how much they wreck the shit out of it.
And the way it transforms.
Yeah.
It's unrecognisable at the end.
Yeah, but at the same time, it doesn't look like a set.
No, not at all. It looks like a very real
location.
I imagine that might be what the majority of the budget went on.
I would hope so, because
I'm thinking the actors, because they are famous actors in it. I'm reckoning this is one of those films where they all kind of took a pay cut to what they'd usually be paid in order to do. Because let's be honest, this is not the type of film. Say you're an actor, this isn't the sort of film, if you're a Hollywood actor, that you get to do very often.
I don't know if that. See, the thing is because it's not going to be a big culture pop hit. It's not that sort of a film, and you'd know that from the page. But you also, realistically, the only thing I can think the reason that you'd sign up for this with a pay cut is if you thought it was Oscar bait.
Or just challenging. Some actors just like to challenge themselves.
No, that's a fair point. We've got no data to suggest.
No,
they
not
took
definitely.
A pay
I mean, for Jennifer Lawrence, I think she would do this film because A, she was actually dating the director at the time.
Yeah, that does help.
But B, at this point in her career, she's still trying to shed that, oh, you're the girl from Hunger Games image.
Yeah.
You're the girl who does, or X-Men was her other big thing because she's Mystique in the X-Men prequels.
Yeah.
But they're all kiddie films, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
This was her, I think, trying to be, look, I can do serious art.
Yeah. Breaking her own mould, almost.
Yeah, Javier Bardem.
It's not an action role either.
No.
Bear in mind, she's the first female Hollywood
Hollywood action hero, yeah. Jennifer Lawrence. Yeah, of course. But yeah, I don't know. It's just what I suspect may have happened.
Either way, I can see why they'd be interested in it. It is, I mean, let's cut to the quick. This is a pretentious film.
Definitely, I'm not going to deny it.
It's and actors are drawn to pretension. There's that whole thing of, I get it. So because I get it, I want to do it. And and there's an audience for pretension. And to be fair, artists are usually the audience for pretension. So yeah, intriguing actors to do roles in productions like this happens all the time. Yeah. But yeah, it's going to be hard to continue that thread without talking more about meaning. Yeah. So let's talk. Yeah, but the set design, as you say, and how. That's the other thing as well. It's easy enough. I say easy enough, but it's simple enough to do a set where it doesn't change and make it look good. To do it where it changes so much, and not just from it's in this state and then it's in this state, but it's in constant flux, and for it to always look consistently good.
The sound design's pretty good in this film as well.
Yeah.
I could tell you, so bear in mind, by the time it got to this point in the film, there were 3 of us in the cinema.
Only one more than there were from you and me watching it just now.
all sat separately as well, so it's this massive cinema with 3 people all sat at different points in the room.
You should have moved behind someone and just kissed the back of their neck.
When the baby dies,
Yes.
a chill went over the audience.
Oh, mate, it's so... You kind of know it's coming, but you don't, and when you hear it,
Yeah,
it's just
and
like...
it is the sound.
Yeah.
The thing that surprised me watching it, my memory of that scene was that you didn't see it. You only heard it.
Yeah, it kind of knocks against something and its neck breaks or something,
Yeah,
isn't it? And
my memory was it cuts back to J-Law and you hear the break and everything goes silent. Yeah. And the three of us in the cinema literally went, like that.
Yeah.
I'm actually disappointed to see that you see it.
Yeah.
A little bit. I don't think you should.
No. It shocks you afterwards because then you find that the cult who were there, who were carrying the baby, are eating it.
Yes, which ties into one of the interpretations that we'll talk about in a minute.
Sure.
We've talked about sound, we've talked about camera work a little bit and direction. Yeah. We've talked about the set. Is there anything else on the technical side you wanted to talk about before we get into the what does it all mean question?
Soundtrack's pretty good. I mean, there's no pop music or anything. It wouldn't fit this sort of a film.
Oh, could you imagine?
Backstreet Boys in the background, Jesus.
Alice Cooper's Dead Babies.
I mean, there's a scene for that.
Dead babies.
But there is... It helps emphasize it that it's one of them weird ones where, unlike something like Star Wars or something like that, where you're sitting there going, yeah, this is a fucking great soundtrack. This isn't one where you go, I've got to buy that on CD, you know, because it services the story, but it doesn't get in the way. And that can be tricky as well when, you know, there's a lot of films where the soundtrack gets in the bloody way.
Yeah.
And sometimes... This film would not need a brash soundtrack, as I say. If you put a pop soundtrack on this, you'd ruin it. But at the same time, sometimes I think that we lack appreciation for when a score is just brilliant at what it does, supporting the movie as a whole and not getting in the way.
Yeah.
So I thought that was worth a bit of a praise since we're here.
Definitely. So as you heard from the critical reaction that we read about, people had differing interpretations of this movie.
Yeah, it sucks.
People I've spoke to, had differing interpretations of it. Some like that, some don't. Let's start with the biblical allegory, because I feel like that's the surface level interpretation.
That's the first one you'll reach when you watch it, I think. That was the first one I got to anyway. Was
Definitely,
that the first?
me too.
Yeah? Okay.
Me too.
It gets to a point where you're like, is this just fucking... Like, because the cult of it,
yeah,
it feels like you're in, like, fucking old school Jerusalem or something.
Yeah.
And here's the second coming of Christ.
Yeah. When I'm watching it this second time, which obviously for me this is the second time, for you it's the first, so many more things add up to make that interpretation seem like the obvious one. So it's very clear to me the house is planet Earth. Javier Bardem is God. As you said yourself, I'm so glad you said it, about how he always seems to know everything. He is omnipotent.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right, sorry.
Yeah. And I think Jennifer Lawrence is Mother Earth, or nature itself.
Oh, like Gaia, Spirit of the Earth, maybe.
Yeah, which, quite rightly, you're right, we never thank her for hospitality on this planet.
In fact, we take advantage of it.
People love to talk about God, who may or may not exist, but they don't. No one gives a fuck about the Earth. I mean, we're starting to now, but it's too little, too late. Quite frankly, fucking global warming's gonna kill us all. Anyway, your first two people you get turn up are Ed Harris and... Well,
Ed Harris first, just on his own for a while.
And he's Adam.
Oh, is he?
You then see him.
I mean, I would have caught that a second time, but I missed that on this view.
So what I caught this second time was when he's vomiting and Javier Bardem covers the wound on his back.
That's the rib.
The missing rib.
Right.
And then Eve turns up, Michelle Pfeiffer.
And she's called Eve.
Yeah. Well, no, I don't know if the characters are called anything.
Right, I see.
I don't think it's that heavy-handed. I think they're literally called, like, man and woman. And I think Bardem's literally just called the poet.
Interesting.
I don't know. Should we look quickly what they're credited as in the cast?
I never caught that there's no names. I never caught that.
Oh,
That's...
yeah.
So, yeah, Jennifer Lawrence is just called Mother, so Mother Earth, yeah.
Yep.
Javier Bardem is just called him,
Him.
like God,
Yep.
him, the creator of the Earth. Ed Harris is man, Michelle Pfeiffer is woman. You got the two Gleason brothers, oldest son and younger brother. Would that be Cain and Abel? Because one kills the other.
One kills the other, and he's marked. He's got blood on him afterwards, hasn't he?
Yes, yes. Jovan Adepo.
I thought it was Jovan Adepo.
Yeah, he plays cupbearer. I wonder if that's...
It's the black guy.
Yeah.
He's Sidney Palmer from Babylon. What are the odds of that?
Yeah.
For the audience who don't know, we've recorded Babylon today as well. And had no idea that Jovan Adepo was in both movies.
I mean, some of these names as well. So, cupbearer is... That's a meaning in a biblical sense, isn't it? There's damsel, consoler.
Stephen McCarthy is zealot. I know that.
Yeah, bumbler. Raphael Gross-Harvey is philanderer. There's fool, wanderer, idler, whisperer.
What's Kristen Wiig's character called?
Greg Bello is pisser, but I think that's more to do with that's what he was doing. Whose name's who?
Kristen Wiig.
Kristen Wiig. Oh yeah, she was in this. Oh, I'm gonna have to go into see all cast. Weirdly enough, she's not on the main front page of IMDb for
That's
it.
odd because she's one of the more famous people in the film.
Yeah, she must be somewhere down. Probably. Here we go. She was Herald. That's definitely a biblical term. Yeah. Thief, plunderer, pilferer, neophyte. Someone was called neophyte. Yeah. Like, you don't accidentally call an extra neophyte.
No.
Let's be honest.
This is definitely biblical.
Yeah, novitiate, initiate, coppersmith. Oh, wow. Yeah, like Good Samaritan, someone was called. You call someone in the back fornicator. Whoremonger. These are all biblical terms. Yeah. Like, there's, apart from maybe pisser.
I don't know. Don't you remember Genesis 2:11?
Yeah.
I remember Austin 3:16. What?
Beefy looter, someone was called. I'm guessing that's to do with his muscles and not just the fact that he was carrying a mound of cow with him.
So you've got Adam, Eve, Cain, and Abel.
Yeah.
The poem that he's already published that they come looking for to talk to him about, that's obviously the Old Testament.
Yes.
And then he writes the New Testament.
Yes.
Which gets him really popular.
Yeah, everyone loves that.
And what you then sort of get, at least this is my interpretation, is you basically get the entirety of human history condensed down into about 30 minutes, where we start with people who are coming quite peacefully, and all they've got is like little torches.
Yeah.
And this evolves up to police with guns turn up.
Yeah, well, the first one, it's the lighter, isn't it?
Yeah.
You mentioned that, didn't you?
Well, I'm talking now about once they've done the New Testament and the people start coming. So once Ed Harris has gone.
Technically, the lighter is the first
flame.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming smashing the thing is symbolic of Eve eating the apple.
Maybe. So can I?
Go ahead.
I've got a quote. So during an interview with IndieWire, Darren Aronofsky explained the concept of the movie. Okay. Jennifer Lawrence, is Gaia or Mother Earth, while her house represents the world, a living, breathing organism being destroyed by its inhabitants. Her husband, known as him in the film, is God. Out of boredom, he creates Adam and Eve, the couple, who proceed to destroy both Gaia's creation and his study, the Garden of Eden, which holds God's perfect crystal, the apple. Their quarrelling sons are Cain and Abel. They also bring worshippers to praise God, who keeps sitting on Mother's unsupported sink, and eventually cause the pipes to burst into a great flood. God impregnates Mother, who gives birth to the Messiah, a chaotic sequence followed by disquieting communion and revelations. So that was Darren Aronofsky talking about it in biblical terms.
Yeah.
Now, that's not it's definitely all there, and it's come from the director himself and the writer, so, not saying it's not the case. That's not actually, for me, the most interesting interpretation.
No, it isn't for me either, which is why I wanted to do this one first.
Yeah, let's keep with this one.
Because this feels like the one you don't have to work to get to either.
Yeah, because all the symbology is there. The cult, the whole, the writing, the great next home, and
they all start becoming as more and more people come, as they start splitting into different religious sects, don't they?
yes, they
And
do.
you
Some
get
some are trying to redecorate, and some are breaking the house apart.
Yeah, you get some, which is a metaphor for humans doing things like fucking blowing up the side of a mountain to look like 4 presidents' faces. Like, how fucking arrogant is that?
Yeah. But it's all I saw that as while people are breaking down the house, they're doing more work than the people redecorating. But as people break the house away to destroy it, that's us, burning fossil fuels, doing whatever.
Stripping the earth of its
You've got a
natural
few
resources.
people basically going, well, we need to recycle, we need to do this.
Oh,
and
okay.
But it's never enough to cover up the damage already done.
Fair play, I didn't get that one. I thought it was humans literally being arrogant enough to reshape the landscape. But yeah, fair play.
I think that's what it is, though. I think it's that there are some people out there trying to cover it up and fix it, but it's never good enough to undo the damage that's being done by everyone else.
Fair play. There's some imagery, once they all start splitting into sects, there's some imagery that's very reminiscent of Nazi Germany, where everyone's locked in cages.
Oh,
yeah.
It was
all the women are locked in those cages, isn't they?
They're segregated as well, and they've got that's very much like the Holocaust.
Yeah. And then you get a bit with Kristen Wiig. In fact, it's Kristen Wiig's last bit. It's very it's Kristen Wiig's last bit. There's a bit where she's got people laying on the floor with bags over their heads, and she walks down shooting them all. And that reminded me of some of the images that have come out of like Al Qaeda and the Taliban and things like that.
Yeah,
over the years,
she's had to kill them for their interpretations of God. Also, that final sequence with Kristen Wiig, she sees Jennifer Lawrence. She goes, "Oh, it's you." Yeah, the inspiration. Ender. And basically they're going to kill her because they don't want. There's 2 interpretations of that. Let's stick with the biblical one for now. But Christian Wiig saying end her in this interpretation where it's religious, it's essentially end the planet because we have sinned too far.
We want the apocalypse.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting because the other idea I had was that could represent the fact that. Do you know what the Apocrypha is?
No, go ahead.
So the Apocrypha. Oh, I'm not joking. I'm saying it in a bit of a jokey way, but the Apocrypha are the deleted scenes from the Bible.
Oh, yes.
The Bible that is supposedly the Word of God
was edited.
It was edited, and the Vatican have kept, and they've admitted these exist. They've kept them, and they are locked in the vault beneath the Vatican, and no one's allowed to read them.
No, I hear there's because there's different, like obviously Paul and things like that. They all had their own parts to the Bible. Apparently, there is a part written by Jesus himself.
Okay,
that's been cut. It's like of all the people to cut from the Bible.
And as you say, Jesus gets born. And they pass him around and destroy him. Obviously, in the actual Bible story, Jesus lives for several years because he grows up, doesn't he?
If he died at a baby, it would be a much shorter Bible.
But the metaphor is still there. The people kill him.
Yeah, and then they eat him. They consume him because
which is the communion.
Yeah, because they eat here's the blood and here's the body.
Yeah, except it's literal and gross.
Yes.
And I kind of interpreted this time. So obviously, she then goes and says, right, fuck you all, I'm burning the planet to the ground.
Yeah.
Which obviously represents some sort of catastrophic
global warming
event.
It's fire.
Global warming is actually perfect. I interpreted it as because it's a very extreme explosion. I noticed this time,
nuclear,
which
almost.
I interpreted it as a nuclear thing because we'd clearly seen the technology going worse. Like as I say, they go from torches to people of brandishing bats and knives to guns coming into play.
Yeah.
The next thing is bombs.
Yeah.
And I kind of interpret it as a message being like, yeah, now that these exist, we are basically doomed. It's just a case of when someone fires them.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, technically, we already have. America fired 2 at Japan.
Yeah.
And those were small ones.
They were small ones, yeah. Well, the Tsar bomb, which is the biggest one ever detonated, is apparently small apparently that one is small compared to what the ones today can do. And the Tsar bomb was fucking insane.
There's no point, is there? Like, well, it stops other people using them, mate. As soon as someone fires, we're all dead. Yeah. It's as straightforward as that. There's a film that we're going to do called On the Beaches, which is Gregory Peck and Ava Gardner. And it's about that. Yeah. One person fires, and that's it. We're all done. That's... you can kiss the whole world goodbye. Not immediately, not all at once, but over time.
So the next bit of the film is the bit that kind of doesn't work with the biblical part of the film unless you're interpreting it as very critical of God himself.
Which, to be fair, is not unfair either, because God in this fucks over the mother Gaia spirit of the earth, doesn't like Mother Earth. She gets completely ruined by him. So I can imagine the worshipping of, because let's be honest, the worshipping of God, if you take it in the Christian sense, which most of this is, if you take it on the Christian sense, a lot of what we consider modern day corporatism and capitalism comes from not necessarily Christianity per se, but Christian societies, because it's all Eurocentric. It all stems from, Catholicism and Christianity, or areas where that was the prevalent religion. Not necessarily that you can't be, you can be Christian and not be capitalist or corporatist, but in general, that's where that, because it didn't come from Africa, it didn't come from Asia, it came from a Christian society. So I think if we are going down that route, it is very much critical of God.
Yeah. And so basically she blows the house up, she's burnt to a wreck, everyone else is dead, and Javier Bardem is completely untouched. And I do like that. I really like the line when she just looks at him and she goes, "What are you?"
Yeah. Yeah,
that's quite
she's burnt
haunting.
to a crisp.
Yeah, and he's fine. And he takes her up to the room, lays her down. What is the burnt remains of the Garden of Eden?
Yeah, his office.
And he lays her down, and she says, like, why did you have to have all those people? Why couldn't you just have
Why couldn't
me?
you have
Why
him
couldn't I
just
be
me?
enough? And he goes, it's not your fault. It would never be enough. And even then, he still has to take the one last thing she's got to give,
Yeah,
which is her
so I've
love.
got nothing else to give. You've got one more thing to give. My love, yes.
Yeah.
And then he asks, can I have it?
Yeah, and she gives it to him.
And so that's another interpretation as well, is how much this talks about narcissism. God is a narcissist in this interpretation.
And I suppose you could interpret the fact that he needs the love to reset everything, because at the beginning you see that as well, don't you? You don't know it's Javier Bardem at that point, but you see him put the crystal in and everything reset. That you could almost interpret that as Aronofsky having a final dig of going, God's not real. All this myth we have only exists because we're giving him. It's a bit like I can't believe I'm saying this, and it's probably wildly offensive, but in A Nightmare on Elm Street, how Freddy is only powerful. I know.
Sorry, give me a sec to laugh at that.
I know.
I'm not going to say your idea is wrong. It's just the ludicrousy.
Freddy and God, I know. Freddy Krueger only exists because people are afraid of the idea of him.
It has the same problem, doesn't it?
Yeah. God only exists because people believe in him.
Yeah.
If everyone just turned around tomorrow and went, actually, the science doesn't bear out, I don't think he's real, that's it. That's it.
He disappears.
Yeah.
Yeah, the world doesn't disappear.
Yeah. At least we hope not.
Let's give it a try.
But yeah, as you say, there's a lot of narcissism as well, which I think comes into my second interpretation as well. But definitely, I mean, he really only, as much as he professes to love Gaia,
but she's never enough.
He only cares about the people coming to love him.
Yeah.
Doesn't he?
Yeah, and he can play that out as, well, I need her love, as well as everyone else's love to reset. Truth of the matter is, he had everything he needed, and it wasn't enough. And as he says, it will never be enough. Yeah. So he just needs more and more love. It's narcissism.
Yeah. So should we talk about what the second interpretation of the film is, which I think we're probably quite similar on what we think it is, but why don't you go ahead?
So my interpretation, as I say, I got the Jesus allegory basically at the birth giving scene. Then a little bit, but it still didn't quite add everything up yet for me. And I'm not a religious guy, so some of the other stuff I bypassed. When we got to it literally is the very end as well. It's not like, I got it about 20 minutes before the ending. It's literally the final scene pretty much. All of a sudden it was like, oh shit, okay, fine. That interpretation is, and this isn't one that Aronofsky said in some of the trivia, but maybe he said it elsewhere, or maybe it was maybe this is our interpretation, us impressing onto his work, which happens a lot in film. This is a writer creating his next beautiful creation in Jennifer Lawrence, and the part that will show that off in just a minute. Yeah, his perfect creation in Jennifer Lawrence. He is desperate to try and perfect it, but he can't show it any attention. That is also shown in the fact that he's meant to be writing this poem. He's paid it zero attention, and we find out he's paid her zero attention sexually. So when Ed Harris and Michelle Pfeiffer come along, Michelle Pfeiffer asks, "Oh, you do want a baby, but you haven't tried. Why haven't you been bothering?" "Oh, it's not you, it's him." And then it later kicks off quite explicitly. She says to him, "You don't pay me any attention, you don't fuck me, you don't do whatever." Yeah, he's not paying that any attention, and immediately afterwards he pays her the attention, gets what he wants, and can start to write again. But he's inviting other people into his creative space, which has bastardized his work, but he likes the attention. So it's taking him more and more away from his work, to the point but he's more interested in the attention than the art. And eventually he gets so fixated on getting the attention for being this amazing artist, the art self-destructs. And by the end, when she dies at the end, and he takes her heart, basically, which is also a little gross, but it turns into another crystal, that's him resetting and having to create a new piece of artwork. That's the next piece of art. So he's now on to, that's the reset. And we know this because Jennifer Lawrence, quote-unquote, appears in the bed again and turns around, and it's a different actress who's a similar body shape, but we're going again. New piece of art, this is the new canvas. Yeah, see, I want to hear what you have to say, because I may have missed bits, or you have alternate interpretations.
More or less that's the same thing. I have heard it said, now I don't know what happened between them, but I know that Darren Aronofsky used to date Rachel Weisz.
Right.
And they broke up about a year before this film came out. And I have heard people say this film should be called I'm Sorry, Rachel. And it's an apology to Rachel Weisz for how he treated her. Now, I don't know how true that is, but that is something I've heard. Yeah, I think, very similar to you, the house and Jennifer Lawrence represent his attempt to create art. And when she says to him, why couldn't I just be enough? What she's saying there is, why couldn't you be a writer who just writes for your own pleasure? You don't send the story anywhere. You just write it for the art for art's sake.
Yes.
But because Darren Aronofsky is not that, he is he's a working filmmaker. All those other people who come in, I think, represent the audience of the film. Who, as soon as you've done something, they start having expectations.
Yes.
We're seeing it with Haunted.
And interpretations.
Yeah,
as well. Yeah.
We're getting emails, literally, and it's nice. I'm not saying I want people to stop, but we've had emails, people going, I swear to God, if these two characters get together, I'll hate it, blah, blah, blah. And things like that can affect the creative process.
Yeah.
It's obviously, again, it's a cheesy example, but we've talked about this with Doctor Who. When Stephen Moffat took over as showrunner and he rebooted the Daleks to the new paradigm Daleks, and they never used them because of audience pressure.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect example of the creative vision being altered by audience.
Reaction.
But I don't think the people invading the house just represent the audience. I'm not saying this is entirely an audience blame thing. They also represent financiers, studios,
distractions.
All of the people. I didn't think distractions. I think it's all the people when you're doing film who come in and alter the vision.
Yeah, and go, that's great, Darren, but maybe this should be different. Why? Because the studio would prefer it if this bit was different.
Yeah.
Or maybe this character, don't cast that person, maybe cast this person.
Or the audience are expecting this because you did it in your last film, so you've got to do it this time.
Yeah. And we've heard of that a million times.
Yeah, and that is the eternal struggle of the artist, because unfortunately, art for art's sake's great, but unless you're born rich, you can't afford to make a living that way.
No, and to be honest, let's be honest, like it's when you're doing film specifically, it's a creative process amongst a group.
Yeah,
so you don't get to have your 100% creative control. Even if you have the money and everything else behind you, you're not in 100% control of everything.
That's why film is it's the fact he's a filmmaker makes me think that that's the interpretation.
Sure.
Because it specifically is the medium that probably has the most people who stick their oar in and alter it.
Yeah.
Until, at the end of the film, the thing he wants to make, Jennifer Lawrence, has become ugly. She's burnt and twisted and horrible. And we've all been there. How many filmmakers and writers make something and then sit there and go, look at me with Candy Heart. I hate it.
Yeah.
So, but then, because he says to her, doesn't he? Because she says, why couldn't you just do art for us? And, can't you stop? And he looks at her and he goes, I can't stop. I'm a creator. She says she don't want it to start again. And he goes, I'm a creator. I create. It's what I do. Yeah. And we've said before, haven't we? Being drawn to filmmaking, writing, or any kind of art, it is a calling. It's not something you just sit there and blunder your way into. It's something that you feel a deep, deep need inside.
Yes.
To bring out. And it does turn you, yourself, the process turns you into a little bit of a monster.
Yes.
I've certainly felt it.
Well, you become selfish, don't you? It's like, this is where you have to check yourself, because someone like...
Before you rickety wreck yourself.
Absolutely. Well, you've given me critique before on my scripts. I've taken it, I like to think, in good stead, but I've not always taken critique in good stead, because it is your baby.
Yeah.
And your first reaction is often to be like, well, you just don't fucking understand it then. Yeah, you didn't like this bit. Oh, it's because you didn't understand it, Jamie.
Yeah.
That, and for every artist, I think that's the first. Maybe you don't understand my genius.
Yeah.
And you've got to quell that narcissistic.
Why are you attacking me?
Yeah, and it's not. They're just trying. If anything, they're trying to help you.
Yeah.
And to be fair, whenever you've helped me with my scripts, they've improved. So you're not trying to attack me. You're actively assisting me improve the process.
Yeah.
But it is hard because you've laboured over something, and then someone hasn't gone, "This is brilliant." But to be honest, anyone who does isn't helping you.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to try and get between, because you want the praise.
Yeah. And we do things like neglecting other people in our lives.
Yeah.
Because of the demands of the job.
Yeah.
I certainly am guilty of having neglected multiple people in my life.
Yeah.
Because of the pursuit of this. Of filmmaking, of Haunted, of trying to be an artist. And yeah, it's... The adoration is also a huge part of that for most people, I think.
Yes.
Because it's addictive, and you do tend to find that a lot of people who go into being artists are people who, through whatever reason, based on the background, are craving attention of a sort. But they also equally hate it at the same time, because the more the audience come, the more they force you to change everything.
Yeah.
To satisfy them.
You know what's weird is I'm scrolling through the trivia for this film as we're talking about this. Loads and loads of trivia about, the biblical interpretation, where Jesus is from, the mother thing, Adam and Eve, the point where after Eve has sex with Adam, they come and she's wearing a bra with leaves on it because of the, the fig leaves of loads and loads and loads of stuff, and stuff about obviously the interpretation of the destruction of Earth. Literally zero on here about interpreting it as a writer-creator paradigm.
And yet I know Joe had the same interpretation.
Yeah, I don't...
And a couple of those critics we read had that interpretation.
Yeah, it feels too on the nose to not have been, at least in... even if it wasn't the main intent, even if the biblical stuff was the main intent, it must have been intended somewhere along the line. Though, it does look like... the film was going to be called Day 6, or I think Day 6 it said.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah, but yeah, Day 6, which was meant to be a title that references the biblical account of God creating the earth and universe in 7 days. And the film's events would be an allegory for the 6th day in God's creation of the world. But again,
so the 6th day creates man.
Yeah, which is why the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie is called The 6th Day.
Because I think looking at where Darren Aronofsky was in his career at this time is important. So
Yeah.
Aronofsky he started off as a little bit of an indie darling with things like Requiem for a Dream.
Yes.
He found more mainstream success with The Wrestler, which obviously won a lot of awards.
But it was still quite indie in its production. Yeah.
Then his next film was Black Swan.
That was a bigger
which
and glossier.
I'm pretty sure is his most successful film in terms of mainstream reach that it had.
Yeah.
But it also was critically regarded and it won a bunch of Oscars, didn't it?
Yeah.
He then did, between this and Mother, between Black Swan and Mother, he did Noah, which was not well received as far as I'm aware, and did not do well at the box office.
Also, another biblical thing. He's obviously gotten into Bible shit for some reason.
Well, it makes me wonder if part of this film is a commentary on him feeling like there was so much pressure on him after Wrestler and Black Swan did well. And then because Noah wasn't exactly what the audience wanted him to follow it up with, because it's a very different film to those two.
Yeah.
He feels a little bit attacked by them. Maybe I don't know though.
Yeah.
I'd love to meet him and ask him.
Yeah. He's a very interesting man. Like, whatever he writes is it's deep, you know. And again, this is probably the most pretentious film that I've seen of his. But at the same time, it's an interesting, pretentious film. It's not, you're not bored.
No.
And he's very talented with the direction of it. But what annoys me about the biblical stuff in here isn't that it's there, because that's cool. It's a nice extra layer. It's just, it's frustrating that there doesn't seem to be any dialogue, from what I've seen there, of at least from him as to the the creator creation paradigm and the effect it has on relationships, because that's very much in this.
Definitely.
And it's just
the fact she's even referred to as the inspiration.
Yeah, and it's just it feels like I want more. Like yourself. I'd love to talk to him and ask him about it and learn more. And it just surprises me it doesn't seem to have ever come up.
The fact it's the Herald as well who says end her.
Yes.
Right, I have to call it that. Tell me that don't feel like studio execs going, we don't want originality, because she's dressed like an exec, isn't she?
Yeah.
She's in a pantsuit.
Yeah.
And like a blazer type studio thing.
Well, she isn't in a blazer when she says that. She's just in the blouse.
Oh, but that's what she's been shown in up to that point.
Yeah.
And when she first turns up, she's very much acting like she's almost his agent, isn't she?
Weirdly enough, my interpretation of her being the Herald, if we're taking it as a creation thing, as the Herald, well, the Herald, generally, the Herald Tribune, is a journalistic paper. So it could be, end this, it's a backlash from critics.
Could be. Herald usually
and
comes...
it's shooting and killing other creations
Yeah.
that didn't meet its expectations.
That could be, yeah. I thought it was studio execs saying, no originality, only sequels,
It's
please.
interesting, isn't it? Because both interpretations work.
Just sequels and remakes
Yeah.
and things like that.
Yeah, it was Captain America in this. It's
Interesting.
This is a brilliant one for the show, because while we don't have the answers, we're not the writer director. It's one of the more fascinating films for interpretation. And weirdly enough, the main one that everyone's discussing is, to me, the less interesting one, which is the biblical shit.
It's the one you don't have to work for.
Yeah, and maybe that's why everyone's gravitated to it, because you don't have to work for it. It's if you take the names in particular, it's text rather than subtext. But the idea of the narcissistic creation, like not necessarily that he's narcissistic, as but the creator. The narcissism of creation. I must create beauty. I must create this. And that also comes along in the fact that, everyone thanks Javier Bardem for hospitality and for everything they've done, but they never thank the creation he was so keen to build. No one thanks the creation for working. They thank the creator. And again, that's what it's pandering to him. Also, the idea of killing her at the end, in such a visceral way, he literally plunges his hands into her burnt flesh and rips out her heart, which then turns into the stone.
What's the famous saying when you're editing your own writing? Kill your darlings.
You've got to, because you can't be enamored with them in so. Because if you are, you can't. It's as I say, when people give you criticism, well, I don't think this bit works. Well, fuck you. That's how that character should be. And it's like, even if you get to do that as a writer, which is rare enough in and of itself, the actor's going to have a different interpretation. So even then, you don't get the final say.
Exactly.
It's that's the part that I find more fascinating. And you know what? That's if I watch this again, which I probably will, not soon. As you say, this isn't a film you can watch several times in sequence. It will take time before I come back to this film. I want to ruminate on it. But when I do come back to it, that's the interpretation I'm going to be looking for. I'm not going to be bothered about going, oh, look, it's Adam and Eve. I don't care. All I care about is, like, where is... Cause for me, that connects me more with Darren Aronofsky. Yeah. I'm like, this is your own psyche. You're talking about your own pain. I want to know that. Not because I want to know how he's in pain specifically, but as a creator, I connect to it. As God, I connect. For Jamie, I am I.
And that is the thing. It's funny, when we recorded Babylon, you accidentally said self-flagellation when you meant, that he was self-indulgent. Yeah. But this almost is self-flagellation.
Yeah, he's not kind to himself.
But at the same time, it's arrogance. Because he's God in this.
Yeah.
Everyone loves him,
yeah.
But at the same time, he is beating himself up constantly because the whole meaning of the film is actually you're horrible to the people around you.
The question then is, because what would be worse, and we don't have an answer to this, what if he didn't intend it? What if the narcissism is so ingrained that he just, I'm the god of this creation?
Yeah. That's possible. I
doubt
on the
it
other
based
things
on...
I've seen.
Yeah,
I'd find that hard to believe. He's a director who seems to think everything through. From what I've seen,
if it was Uwe Boll, number one, it would not be this fucking good. But B, I would definitely believe that had you accidentally made a film as deep as this, it would all be accident, and he would definitely be that narcissistic. Darren Aronofsky has proven himself multiple times to be much deeper.
Yeah.
So
totally.
Even if any, the worst interpretation of Aronofsky I could make from this film is that he has that narcissistic streak in him.
Yeah.
But at the very least,
I would argue every filmmaker does.
But at the very least, he recognises it.
Because it takes a degree of narcissism to sit there and go, this thing that I have come up with inside my head must be made external. Other people must see it, or read it, or listen to it.
Yeah, no, you're right.
It takes an act of arrogance to go through the creation process. I almost think it's not possible to be completely free of arrogance.
No, because
if you are a self-aware being.
Yeah, because I mean, narcissism anyway is an extreme of narcissistic tendencies, which everyone has. Everyone has the tendencies of certain types of narcissism. They're just not necessarily narcissists. So, I just wanted to be clear that we're not necessarily saying if you share traits of this, then you are a narcissist.
No. I'm just pointing out that I think anything that is self-aware has to have at least a streak of narcissism, because you have to have that to recognise that you exist as an individual and not as one of a whole. This isn't anything to do with film. This is me getting into philosophy
No.
now.
Yeah, sure.
But you could argue that the mere act of recognising yourself as an individual, of using the word I, is... I'm not saying that makes you... I'm not saying it means you've got narcissistic personality disorder, but that in itself, recognising yourself, is an act of small narcissism.
Yeah.
Because
I am an individual.
I am an individual. I think, therefore I am. I do this, I do that.
I am unique.
Yeah.
Among a whole race of similar things.
The interesting thing, as we're heading into the age of AI and robots, they might be the first beings that you can say are not that.
What, narcissistic?
Yeah. Arguably, let's say robotics ends up like the Cybermen. There's no individuality.
Yeah.
They are, or the Borg from Star Trek.
Yeah.
They are, or even the Terminators in Terminator, they're just Skynet. We're all extensions of Skynet. We're not people. We're not individuals. We don't have wants and needs and desires, which is obviously why robots are terrifying in sci-fi as villains.
Well, they are completely alien.
Yeah, they have no desires.
At best, what we do with AI at the moment, with, I don't know, AI girlfriends or whatever, or just chatbots like ChatGPT, we try and train them up to be more human, which is also terrifying because look how fucked up we are.
Yeah.
You know, and yet we're going, oh, for our own safety, happiness, privacy, security, you know, to make us feel comfortable, be more like us. Yeah, we are fucked up. Don't train the new life to be as us.
Yeah.
We're fucked up.
Oh, anyway, I think that's all there is to say about Mother.
Yeah, would you watch it a third time?
Definitely. Not, again, like you said, not anytime soon. I really like this movie. I would probably, I might even consider this one of my top 100 films I've ever seen.
Right. I don't know if I'd place it that high. I'd have to watch it. I think, here's the irony. I think I'd have to watch it a second time to make a choice on whether or not I think it's a great movie or not. Because at the moment, it's just, when you follow it the first time, you don't follow it. It's fucked up. You're like, what is this shit? And you spend most of it trying to go, is it just me or is this film garbage? Like, literally questioning if it's actual garbage. And then suddenly when it starts to click and you're like, is it that? It could be that. And then at the end, all of a sudden, the final revelation, and I was like, oh, it's not garbage. It makes sense to some degree. But I still can't tell if it's good because I spent most of the film thinking, is this garbage? So I'd have to watch it again, knowing what the story's going to be about, to tell if it's good or garbage. I assume it's not garbage, because at the very least I got a meaning out of it. But again, this is why when the people tried to give it the golden raspberries, and when there was that guy who was basically going, everyone's pretentious, it's actually garbage, no one cares. I understand that interpretation. Their interpretation is based on the fact they didn't get it.
Yeah.
And you know what? Fine.
Yeah, that's totally fine.
This is not a pop film.
No, you're entitled to not like a movie.
Yeah, this is pretentious. It's not a pop film. If all you like is Marvel, don't fucking watch Mother. You won't have a clue. If you're into art films and deeper movies and really having to wrestle with a subject to try and get something out of it, Mother's a worthy watch. But don't expect to get it on first listen. Or first watch, sorry. I can't even tell you if it's a good film at this point.
Yeah.
I want to watch it again. I'm fairly certain I'd come up with, yes, it's a good movie. But I don't want to say it without knowing.
No.
Is that how you felt between your first and second viewing?
I've definitely enjoyed it more this second time.
Yeah.
I was a little bit worried watching it because I was like, am I going to watch this and actually come away thinking, oh, it's pretentious shit. What was I thinking? I was not bored at all. I enjoyed it very much. I enjoyed spotting the clues that I'd missed the first time.
Yeah.
And being like, oh, yeah, there's the... Because I'd missed the rib thing the first time. Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it more this time. But that might be because it has been about 6 years or so now.
Wow.
Which is insane, because I saw this when it came out.
In the cinema, as you said, yeah.
Yeah. That's terrifying that 6 years have gone.
The passage of time.
But good that it stuck in my head for 6 years.
Yeah. To be fair, some of that passage of time seems faster because we were doing fuck all in the middle of it. Yeah, because of the pandemic.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you everyone for tuning in to another episode of Second Take Cinema. Please do feel free to contact us on info.impalafilms@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought of Mother, or if there's another film you'd like us to check out. You can also check out our other review show, VGMP, the Video Game Movie Podcast, where we review movies based on video games. You can also check out our audio drama series, Haunted the Audio Drama, on all good podcasting apps. Until next time, have a great day, and we will see you for more Second Take Cinema.